Simon, and I'd also like to pay my respects and acknowledge the traditional owners on the land in which we meet today, the Gadigal people. Something happened to me today. I got PowerPoint envy. I wasn't going to turn up with one, but I ducked out at lunchtime and whacked this together. So apologies for any spelling. I spelt my name right, so that's something. Yes, I am from Western Australia. And it's I suppose it's a different patch for a number of reasons. I sat on the Western group earlier because I thought there might be some similarities in terms of remoteness and the sort of the regional focus, which is different to an urban setting. And I guess there are parallels, but we also deal with highly remote situations, which are probably only seen in places like WA and the Territory. So, Community Housing Limited, we're a not-for-profit company, community housing company. We're established in 1993, so we're nearly 25 years old. We operate in all states and we've got about 7,000 properties under management under a variety of programs, things like transitional housing. So we do manage Aboriginal transitional housing in Kununurra, Halls Creek and Broome. We've got other programs. We do a lot of work in the disability space and we regard ourselves as a provider for people with high and complex needs. Key workers in some of the places like the Pilbara region, and also Aboriginal housing. In WA there's around 450 homes specifically managed for Aboriginal people in 26 towns and communities. And I suppose it's such a focus for us that this year we've also, as part of our group of companies, created an entity called Aboriginal Community Housing Limited, which is going through the process now of establishing a board, its own governance rules. It'll be a majority Aboriginal board and so on. A big part of our mission is to maintain links with communities, particularly through things like creating local employment and training in the development of housing, particularly in areas where you might imagine unemployment rates are higher than in urban centres, and also supporting community building initiatives. I suppose part of our reason for being is that good housing supports community development and vice versa. So we're very much in there at the community level doing what we can to build up communities, and we have a community development manager based in WA. Just quickly on community development, broadly speaking, the way we regard it is playing to your strengths. So much in the Aboriginal space is about the old deficit model of what's wrong, how can we fix what's wrong. So we turn that on its head, and it's about, well, what are the assets here? How do we play to what the community has going for it? And we've had a bit of this today. People need to participate in and shape their own development. We need to take stock and strength of community assets, and capable local institutions are essential to achieving good outcomes. Just a quick slide on some of our challenges. Columbaroo it's about a 3.5 hour flight on a jet from Perth to Kununurra, and then it's another hour in a four-seater plane to get out to somewhere like Columbaroo, which is under management. And Western Australia has its own challenges and peculiarities. For example, I think I'll be long gone before we start talking about home ownership somewhere like this, because it's under a very different form of tenure, essentially held by the Crown. And I think time's upon us, so I'll keep moving. Our experience is very different to Rebecca's around head maintenance, mainly because the government essentially gave us, they said the head maintenance or the centralised maintenance model that was working well in what we call Homes West, or the 40 or so public housing assets under management in WA, could extend to remote communities. And at the time we all rallied and said, no, that's not going to work. But it happened anyway. So yeah, I won't go on about that. But we have a very different experience. Hence, a lot of the remaining few minutes is about really trying to see what you can garner and glean out from a more localised community maintenance model, and hopefully some of that resonates with the smaller providers in the room. So it's really, I think basically whether you go head maintenance, centralised, decentralised, it's probably horses for courses, but our experience in WA, and I hope there's no other West Australians in the room, was pretty shit. Won't be saying that in November. So we have an IMS. We have a internal maintenance service based in the Kimberley, and we've just called it the Kimberley Community Maintenance Service, which is all about branding and just giving it that point of difference. We figured the word community in the title was quite good. It's competing against other maintenance services, so it just gives us that little edge, we're hoping. Just really quickly, we believe it's important to have staff close to a winning community. It's important to collaborate with job pathways organisations, such as you work for the Dole. Do you have CDP out in the Western and the inner urban? Yeah. So where you can, that's a really good opportunity to get that throughput, if you like, or those young trainees onto an employment pathway, and that's working really well. It's early days, but it's proving beneficial. We also, where we can, assist in delivering community-based projects. So, for example, there's a community near Wyndham called Goodagooda, and we've just had the maintenance shed work on completing an internal office for the community where they can run their traditional owner business, they can look at enterprise development. We didn't get any money for it, but it was a really good community building initiative. It was largely funded through grants, actually, lottery grants, etc. But it's just really good to build the community up. And also, where we can, we collaborate with local agencies and support organisations, things such as cleaning works in the community, providing prizes for best garden and all those sort of things. Information and communication. I should have said at the outset that in terms of any pearls of wisdom here, which they're not sort of on one hand, I think, but responsive maintenance has to be responsive. The problems we've had with the head maintenance contract in WA is that someone's waiting. We actually had a tenant pass away in Columbaroo, waiting for months and months for a hot water system. Now that was urgent maintenance, and the bloody thing never showed up. And maintenance has got nothing to do with us in that context, I should add. We are completely divorced from that maintenance responsibility. But yeah, you hang your head in shame when things like that happen. But information and communication is critical. It's critical to ensure the service is accessible to tenants so they know what's going on. And it's also supported by all parts of the business, the finance side, the tenancy side, the maintenance side, the call centre if you've got one. Everyone knows what's going on. Tenants often don't know their rights and obligations as tenants, and it's important that they know that, and it's important that they understand what your rights and obligations are as well. That you provide clear procedures for reporting repairs and maintenance, particularly around priority work. So if something is broken and it needs fixing in 24 or 48 hours or whatever it may be, they know that, and they have a right for that to be fixed in that timescale. And it's important to collect information to ensure, I think Rebecca touched on that, around audit and compliance. It's important to gather that information as you go. Best practice in customer care. What are some things I can quickly pull out here? We found it's good to have an administration person who supports the maintenance team, someone who's local, because a lot of that maintenance work, a lot of that admin work is tiresome, and only clever people who are good with computers, etc., can do admin. Your average tradie isn't necessarily that good with admin. So, sorry, that's a shocking stereotype, but also having someone local can help do things like lessen language barriers and miscommunications. So if you're calling through to a call centre in Melbourne or Perth, some of those language barriers might be looming large. Things like code of conducts for contractors. It's good to take photos, and a lot of organisations are now moving to have their own sort of app or use an app and to go around a house and take photos. So there's evidence which legitimises the whole process. Having a good out-of-hours service. Better move on. What was that? Sorry. Yep. Value for money, we broadly use the 60-40 rule in terms of planned versus responsive maintenance, but I think we're still heading there. But that's our general rule of thumb, and I was interested in Simon's comments because that's an interesting way of looking at it as well. In terms of value for money, complete the job right first time without the need for follow-up work. Provide opportunity for local trades and businesses, and also minimise defects. So all those value for money things that you have to build in as business as usual into your business. Another thing we've learned is about not getting too typecast. And there was a comment from earlier today that maybe, an Aboriginal maintenance body can also do maintenance on non-Aboriginal housing assets. Well, why not? Why not go to the local shire, help the local school or the hospital? That's something that we're discovering. It's good to put your shingle out there and provide as broad a service as possible. It'll help with your sustainability. It'll help with your continuity of work supply, and it'll get your name out there, and it'll really improve your bottom line. We've learnt just that top dot point there that having the right amount of staff is critical. It's a bleeding obvious point, I guess, but having a really good supervisor is essential. We've currently believe we also need a painter, a cabinet maker and a glazier. And down the track we'll look at plumbers and electricians as we move towards a more sort of formal environment. Also, that point near the end, thinking about regular maintenance requirements, we have a lot of work on things like crim-safe screens, which are $1,000 each, sort of wholesale. So if we could move towards manufacturing things like that, things that break easily or frequently, if we can have things like a window press in our shed or our factory, that would help us out a lot. And just a point about conflict of interest, when you've got a maintenance shed as part of your whole Aboriginal housing and tenancy management enterprise, some people, it's not necessarily a point I hold, but some people think that you've got a bit of a conflict there because the tenancy people are doing an inspection and then giving the work to the maintenance crew. It may be a suggestion to keep the two businesses separate, or keep the admin on the housing management side and the asset maintenance on the other side or in another entity. That's just a perception that may come up. Just things we've learned about a decentralised approach, and these are very real. These are not just things I think, but we believe and we can demonstrate that certainly in a West Australian context, if maintenance is decentralised, in other words, it's more localised, and you got a team on the ground who are closer to the tenants that they serve, you'll have less wait times, you'll have better local knowledge around things like, is the tenant going to be home, is there a funeral, all those sort of things. So it increases the responsiveness of the responsive maintenance service. In the Kimberley alone, under the head maintenance contract, something like $10 million in variable travel costs. So the travel costs just go through the roof. So we think you can keep costs down through a more decentralised approach. There's less bureaucracy. There's increased responsibility. We would argue you can't pass the buck quite as easily. The links between tenancy and maintenance are stronger, and that's really important, that there's things are joined up there. There's better admin support, as I said earlier, and there's also increased capacity to get tenants involved in maintenance work. That's me.